Hi, my name is Ross Ziegelmeyer. I am the digital content producer here at the Linnean Society. I am going to be instructing you through this workshop. This workshop is the first of 3 workshops. The 3 workshops will take us through the whole process of drawing a seal. You should have a copy of the worksheet where you'll be able to see the skeletal structure of a seal with its muscles attached, and a seal with its skin on. In this workshop, we're going to focus on getting the proportions of the seal correct. And for us to do that is to look at the supporting structure of the seal's body, which is of course its skeleton. So we're going to use the skeletal structure to help guide us in drawing out the proportions of the seal correctly. To complete this workshop, you will need a blank piece of paper, preferably A3, but A4 will do. You need a solid flat surface to draw on. A ruler would be very helpful, and 3 different colored pencils, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 black or grey. So let's get started. So you see here, I am sketching very lightly, and that's correct, very lightly. You see here on the right hand side, sketching really hard. That's not right. We want the sketches, our marks, to be as light as possible so that we can build our picture up and always see the new lines we're putting down. So we slowly build it up. So when you're sketching throughout this workshop, just make sure your mark making is very light. Right, drawing with shapes. So everything you see around you is made up of 3 basic shapes. So the first shape that you'll see a lot is a circle. So you see I'll start drawing a circle. Make it nice and round. There we go. There you go. It's not a perfect circle, but there are very few perfect circles in nature. And then we've got a square. So just sketch out a square here for you. And I would practice sketching out these shapes. Sketching out circles again and again and again seems really basic, but if you master these 3 shapes, then drawing becomes a lot easier. And the third and last shape is a triangle. Again, just sketching this out roughly for you so you can see it. So everything you see around you, you can construct using these 3 shapes: a circle, a square, and a triangle. So what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate that, is I'm going to use some shapes to create a drawing. Now, I don't really know what I'm drawing here. I'm just putting shapes together in the hope that something will come out of it. So I've got my square, a circle that's intersecting the square. I put a triangle on there. You can see I'm not entirely sure what I'm drawing here, but I'm just going to keep going. So another small triangle there. We've got part of a circle there. I'm thinking maybe do another triangle there, and a rectangle. It's starting to look a bit like a head. I'm not sure what kind of head just yet. So we're going to intersect that circle there. I'm going to make a rectangle here. There we go. It looks a bit like a chameleon's head, I guess a chameleon's head. So I'm just gonna sketch a eye in here, sketch an eye in there, give the eye some shape, put in a nostril there, do a funny squiggly mouth, just define that lip there a little bit, put in some wrinkles for the eye, put in the big googly eye, make a mark for the ear, just define the shape up a little bit more. And there we go, we've got a funny sort of chameleon head. But essentially this exercise is really good for you to practice. Just start drawing different shapes down on a piece of paper, putting them together, and see what comes out of it. Try not to plan anything, just put all the different shapes together and see what you come up with. Right, so we're going to get into our actual exercise today, now that we've got some fundamentals down. And here we've got the drawing of the seal that we've supplied you with. And I'm going to start off by just putting down a ground line. You can use your ruler to put that line down. I will explain throughout here how I'm doing it on the computer, but I can also explain how you can do it with your ruler. So the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out what one head length of our animal is. So you see here what I'm doing is I'm measuring my head, and you can do that with your ruler. You can put that line down, and that unit there is called one head length. Now we're going to use this head length to use as a unit to discover the rest of the proportions of the body. Now I've just copy and pasted that unit, but what you can do is you can draw the one head length with your ruler and slide your ruler across the page and draw it out again. It's easier with the ruler because you've actually got your measurements on the ruler, which is why I've just copied and pasted. So I look at the neck and I think to myself, well, the neck is one head length unit, so draw that out. The next thing to do is look at the torso, the rest of the body, actually the whole body. So I draw a line down from where the neck joins the body. You can see it's just in front of the shoulders of the seal, and I draw that line all the way down to our baseline. You can see I'm trying to do my strokes as lightly as possible. They should be even lighter on your page. I'm making them slightly dark, and I will do throughout this exercise just so you can see them. So there I'm measuring the halfway point, and the halfway point of the animal actually seems to be one head length. So this animal's body is 2 head lengths high. And I'm sketching down on the other side at the back hips, and I half the length of the body, and that also seems to be 2 head lengths long. So this animal's proportions are 2 head lengths by 2 head lengths, and actually forms a square. So I'm just lightly sketching it down on this side as well, where we will build our picture up. So you can see 2 head lengths by 2 head lengths. So now I'm going to draw the mid lengths. So I'm just following those lines across. That gives us the mid length. This is a nice and neat proportioned animal. And draw our mid lengths across there. And those are midpoints. Now that allows me then to dissect the upper section of this square in half as well, and this will become very useful later on when we block in our shapes, as it just gives us a finer grid to work with. So I divide that top section there in half, and that's us done with the proportions. We've got all our proportions down, we've got our square, we've got our neck, we've got our head, and we can move on. Right, the next thing we want to do is we want to implement that shapes lesson right at the beginning. So use a different color if you've got one, it just makes things easier to see. And what I'm doing here is I'm blocking in some shapes. So I've got a sort of triangle with a bit of a square at the end, and we've got another shape there, you see, just blocking around the skull. And I'm going to do the same on this side. So you can see I'm using part of a triangle and part of a square with a bit of a rounded edge at the bottom there, at the top there, sorry. And so I'm going to build up the skull just like this. And you can do the same by just drawing over your skeleton structure. It's there, it's an exercise sheet, so don't be afraid to just draw on top of it and then draw next to it just to get your eye in. So here again, I've got the shape, just square at the bottom, a bit rounded, more rounded at the top, and I'm going to fill that in just like that. Okay. So we've got our head and our neck there. Again, I would draw very lightly with your different colored pencil. I'm just drawing slightly darker than you would usually, just so that you can see what I'm doing. And also, if you're not working on a computer, you'll need to be able to draw lighter because you're going to build the image up, whereas on a computer I can change the layers. So over on the left hand side, I'm building up the shapes of the the rib cage, and you see I start off because it's quite a big shape and I want to make sure I get the shape correct. So I break the shape down into two halves. I've got a triangle mixed with a circle there, and now I start on the second half of the rib cage and I work around that there, and that's also partly a circle, partly a triangle. And because I've got that grid down for the middle part of the upper half of the square, I can easily see where I want my shape to go. So I'm just blocking that in there. Next, I'm going to look at the hips. So what I want to do is actually, I decided later on, I want to just see where that midpoint is at the bottom as well, to be a guide for the hips, see where the hips align. Now, don't try and detail the hips. Remember, just constantly remember, we're only doing big basic shapes. There's no detailed work being done here. It's just to help us guide our drawing later on. So I've just created a triangle for the hips, and I'm going to do the same on the other side so we can see that triangle. Just notice the rib cage is slightly bigger than it should be. That's fine. Again, this is just rough. You're sort of discovering the drawing, and these corrections are all part of the process. So it will help you create that structure that will really inform the drawing later on. So I'm doing the bigger section, the upper section of the leg here. So I'm doing the legs now. And again, there's two bones in there, but I'm just blocking it out as a square because really what I want to do is just get some big basic shapes, doing my best to avoid any kind of detail. Again, I'm doing a bended rectangle, ignoring all the different vertebrae, but just blocking in a big shape. And the next thing to do is to look at the feet. Now you see the feet aren't touching the baseline, so it's good to be aware of that, and the toes are just over that mid section of the square. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring that foot just over that midline, and again just looking at the big shapes So this is really what you want to do. You want to go through and focus on all the big shapes. Right, so that's the feet done. And now looking at that front leg. Again, there's two bones there, very clear, you can see them both, but really what I'm interested in is what's the big shape. So I draw around it, give myself an idea of where the big shape is and where it goes, and I sketch it in. There we go. Another foot. Try to do one big shape for the foot. Again, it could be broken up into smaller pieces, but we're only interested in the big shapes. So there you go. We've blocked in our seal with some big basic shapes. It's getting there. Okay, so we're going to detail our proportions now, and what that means is we're going to draw out in a different color pencil, if you've got one, the shapes within the big shapes we've drawn. So all I'm doing here is I am, with a different colored pencil, just lightly indicating for myself where my proportional structures are. So I get that square down, just sketch out the intersections there, and you can see I've done the neck. I'm doing the head now. That's proportional structure of the skull, the body done. So now I'm just going over the body. You'll see these light sketch marks as I build up the body. And I've moved over to the head now. If you look at the head, and what I'm doing is I'm just getting finer detail of what the shape of the skull is. So I'm constantly looking at the skull and getting the big shapes of the skull down. So where those angles change, I'm always looking for where the angles change, and I'm using quick strokes, not doing this slowly. This is still very rough, but the quick strokes allow me to get the shapes and the curves of the skeleton right. So you don't want to do this slow. This is quick sketching, really getting those curves down. So I've just done the neck, as you can see, built up the neck. Now we're doing that part of the sternum coming up, and we're going to work down to the bottom of the rib cage, lightly sketching around. As you can see, quick sketch marks, really quick, building it up. So now I'm doing the back of the spine, just connecting that down. I'm going to do the rest of the spine a bit later, just building that section up there. I've decided to come back to the shoulder blade, as I can now see that that needs to be detailed in, so that's what I've done. Done the shoulder blade, doing the front leg. Now you can see that there are two big bones in the leg, so I thought it'd be worth detailing the two big bones. So I'm just putting those two big bones in there first, but again, not drawing out the detail on the bone, but just indicating that there are two bones there. The next bit is I've separated out the front foot into smaller sections. So we've got the digits as a section, and then we've got the upper bones as a different section. And I'm just indicating here very roughly that there are toes. Coming back to the torso, I'm just indicating that there's a roundness to it. As you can see, if you look at the torso, where the ribs join, the upper part of the ribs and the lower part of the ribs, there's sort of a join there, and I just want to indicate that because that line is really helpful to show that the rib cage has a roundness to it. So I'll do that as well because I feel like that helps with that bigger shape, as it is one of the largest shapes in our drawing. I'm doing now the hips, doing a little bit of a finer work on the hips. I know that they're not exactly triangles, so I'm going in and again referencing that skeleton the whole time, seeing what that smaller shape is in there. You'll notice that I'm bouncing around quite a lot on the drawing. I'm moving from the torso to the head to the neck to the foot to the hips, and the reason I'm doing this is because it's good to build up your image slowly and all at once, rather than focusing on one section and moving across. That always helps you to keep perspective on your drawing, as bouncing around helps you to build up the whole drawing together and keep perspective. So I've done now the front back leg, the bones there, and now the hip. Now I've just put that hole in the hip because I feel like it's quite a defining feature and it gives us sort of a dimension to it. Next I'm doing the foot, and you can see I indicated the very back bone there, just indicating that there are digits coming off there, but again not detailing those bones in any way. And doing the same with back left foot, putting that in there as well, again detailing that there are digits. Now I'm coming back to the spine. I've just erased that little section there. Don't be afraid to use your eraser. Like I said, we're discovering our drawing, so it's okay to do that. And I'm just going to sketch in the spine, because I think if I sketch in the spine, that will help bring the whole structure alive, as opposed to it just being a rib cage in that midsection. It now will have a definable spine as well. So I'm just going to do that. I want to look at this shoulder blade again. It's a very big shape as well, and I think it can do with a little bit of definition. So I'm just putting in that line there, as you can see in the sketching of on the left hand side, and just defining those leg bones as well. There we go. Put that in. As you can see, I've bounced around a lot on the drawing. I've come back to sections and built them up again before jumping to another section and building that section up there again. And you can see I'm putting a little bit more detail on the bones, the bigger bones, just to give them shape. But again, trying not to go into too much detail. It's really just giving us the basic proportions. And here just showing that that foot is made up of many different bones, but not indicating every bone. And doing the same on the left foot there, just indicating that there are bones. Doing a little bit more detailing on the hips. And like I said before, just bouncing around the page. You can see my mark making is becoming a bit more firmer. And this is why I say it's best to draw lightly and slowly build up your image. Now move to the head. Looking for the big shape. There, it looks like the eye socket, and I'm just going to put that in there. And those bigger shapes I use to create the head there act as good references for me to understand where that shape I'm drawing should be. And that's just the gap between the upper and the lower jaw that I thought was also quite poignant. And there we go. We've got our correctly proportioned skeletal structure of our seal. This workshop is the first in a 3-part series. On the 19th of August, you can join us again, where we will be looking at the muscles of our seal and how they will inform a more 3-dimensional drawing. The session after that, we will be learning how to shade our 3D shapes and our seal. Please feel free to give any feedback in the comments, and make sure to rewind the video if you want to watch any sections again. Thank you all for joining us, and I will see you all again on the 19th of August.